So I'm going to talk about the map that's in the Atlas of Design. I'm thrilled to be in the Atlas of Design. I'm not talking about that, but I just wanted to plug the Atlas of Design. I'm going to talk about that, all the maps in the map gallery. No, I'm not going to talk about that either. I'm going to talk about migration patterns of cartographers at 12:30 in the morning at the Loop. No, I'm not going to talk about that either. So, mapping as public art. I've heard various people this week talk about maps scale, as in the physical size you print them, so I'm going to try and outdo you. So, I'm trying in my artistic practice to go from spending months, literally months, drawing one map by hand, to being able to be sustainable as an artist, which means spread myself thinner, but make more money doing so. So this is a large piece that is in the Gulf Shores Hilton in Alabama. It was a commissioned map. So stepping away from my fictional maps, that map shows the geology and all the state parks in Alabama. So that's nice, but it's 2D. So my local arts council ran a workshop in public art to try and help local artists learn a bit more. And at the end of it, if you completed the workshop, you had a competition to see who had a piece that was voted on, and that would get funded. So I decided to have a go. But you can't do public art unless you've done public art. No one's going to hire you to put a big sculpture somewhere unless you had a big sculpture. And you have to do an RFQ, not an RFP. So you have to prove you're qualified before you can even give them your idea. So I didn't qualify. I make hand-drawn, plausible, fictitious maps, and no one's going to pay me to do anything else. And it's very hard to break in the space. You have to write loads of things. It's like writing a grant proposal. Your resume has to be very specific. You have to target why you're interested and prove that you can do it. So I decided I wanted to have something that was inspired by downtown Huntsville. And I figured 1921 and 2021 were good years to depict. So I'm coming up with this concept, and I want to do a snapshot of time. I'm partly thinking, what do I want to do? And partly thinking, what do they want to fund? Which is an interesting way of doing it. So, Sanborn fire maps were 1921. I found maps that were 100 years prior to when I gave this presentation. So I thought, well, if I take that data and look at it, what can I do with it that becomes interesting as a sculpture? So I rotated it to make it slightly easier, and then stitched them all together for downtown Huntsville, for the area that I wanted to portray. And there's a nice little gap in it, so I had to fill that in. Thankfully, there's only a stream in there. So I've rotated Huntsville a little bit because I wanted to do a massive 4-foot by 8-foot map. And putting it at an angle just seemed like a really bad idea. So I credit the city of Huntsville because I emailed them and said, can I use your GIS data for maps and art? And they gave me a link. So I took that as yes. So I was going to study 1921 and compare it to 2021. What's different, what's there, and how do I propose it? So I came up with a proposal. Here's a large steel cube, and I put dimensions on it. I looked like I knew what I was doing. I then went into Photoshop, and this is the site. There's a sculpture there currently, so I removed it in my best learning how to do that in Photoshop skills. I then found a piece of steel, and I etched a map of Huntsville in 1921. So what I've done is photoshopped it and made it look pretty, and then I put a piece of acrylic in front of it and made it look pretty. And apparently, I won the competition. So now what? What do I know about fabrication? I'm not going to learn welding to make a map. That's a silly idea. So, anyone else been intimidated by a project after they've given you money? Learning new software, new technique, a new concept, a new scale. I can't possibly go that big. Yeah, I can. So what did I actually have to do? So the 1921 Sanborn maps were not digitized, so after I rectified them, the left-hand side is I hand digitized all the building outlines. So I wanted to simplify what I was going to show. Just buildings and just the rivers, because the rivers have been culvertized and put underground. You can see there's a large building on the right-hand side, which is the civic center. So the map was going to be placed outside of that. I wanted that to be a focal point, and then the city center where the courthouse is. And I then got it fabricated. So this is a piece of aluminum being laser cut to make the screen to do sandblasting. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. So it's really cool watching your artwork go from a drawing you've done to look through a very strange colored glass so it protects your eyes, and you get all your buildings cut out this rapidly. It's so rewarding to see another version of your work that you have no control over. You cede control and hope it looks okay. And that's the sheet that came from it. So that was Huntsville in 2021. The place I was working with had never done anything like this before, and they didn't realize the amount of man hours it would take to go clean up all the little edges. So I think I got a good deal on the price. And then they took that screen and sandblasted out the weathered steel that's underneath. Also very rewarding to watch, and also glad that he's got that massive asbestos glove on one hand, because it looks like he's painting, but that's sandblasting, which is really rather cool. I could sit and watch this for hours, but we're not going to in the interest of time. This is the remnant. This is the Civic Center that was the scrap. So they said, do you want to keep all the building pieces? Like, well, yeah. I've got a box of scrap aluminum, and it sits under my desk at home, and I'll do something with it at some point, maybe. I've also thought about labeling them all in a stupid way, and then trying to give them to the people whose homes they are. So like, here's your house in metal. And then it got assembled, so there's 2 layers. They were both sandblasted. The top one's not very visible there yet, but you've got weathered steel on the bottom, and then you've got acrylic on top, which has got a blue protective film. I didn't know you could sandblast acrylic, and it would work, so you could. And then it stood up, and I went and saw it and went, it's really big. Like, really big. I'm not small, I'm 6'2". So it was supposed to be 9 foot tall, and it looks like it's much taller than that. But then last week, I realized I don't have any pictures of it for this presentation. So I went there, and we had this rather wonderful Christmas Day effect of unveiling it by pulling off the film and seeing through it for the first time. And I've deliberately left the sound off because the workers there were all going, ooh, this is really cool. They wanted to play. The fabrication company's owner was just talking about how cool this is, and finally seeing something that they had made that they hadn't seen either. So really fun to get to see something that you've imagined come to life. Yeah, I might smile quite a bit during it. Oh, actually, I can hear them talking. Sorry, I'm supposed to mute that. Anyway, it's really big. 9 foot tall, 4 foot wide, 3 foot deep, and it weighs 500 pounds. I couldn't get it to the map gallery. I really wanted to. Yeah, it didn't work. So the idea is you can walk through time. So the 3 foot gap is wide enough for someone to walk between the 2 layers and investigate what's changed in that part of town. You can look through it square on and see both layers overlaid. So the idea is I want people to play with it. The competition was for a temporary structure. I decided that a 2-year display, this is my one chance to build a piece of public art that will allow me to have a portfolio to have a piece of public art. So I was willing to spend some of my own money to get it built so that I have a calling card. And it's for sale. I can't wait to see it in position. The other sculpture is still there. So I was hoping it would be in place. Originally, I'd planned the back layer, the weathered steel, to actually be cut all the way through so you can see through it and light come through where the buildings are. But if you remember what the Civic Center looks like, it is an ugly mess of a building. And I realized that would be the focus of the art, not what I wanted people to focus on. So my first piece of public art exists. It's just not in front of the public yet. So if you follow my Instagram or Facebook or anything, I will be posting about it when it actually gets out there. So what does this mean for my career as a public artist, now that I can say that? It means I can do things that I want to do, hopefully. I want to do some fictional pieces this large, because that relates to what I want to do, and I've just submitted a qualification request for that. But I also want to take things that I've learned and experiences I've had, often at NACIS, like Becca's talk the other morning that related to social justice around mapping, and I've heard other people talk about things that make me go, what if I do that with my maps? And what if I do it on a monumental scale? So take something physical, put it on the street, you can't ignore it. So one of the things I'm interested in is the overlap of policies on the downtown areas. So this is actually another map. This was, I had a hectic week. I was in England last week, and then I had to submit this Monday. This is a $60,000 commission that I'm a finalist for, which I have to present on Tuesday next week. So I've taken a large swath of Huntsville because it's a 50-foot long map. So, very nervous. I've had to submit the presentation already, so I can't tweak it last minute like I did this one. But the plan is white aluminum sheets that are 4 foot by 8 with the road network printed on them really subtly, and then wood cut out, color-coded, as in a different wood based on the use of the building. So I've got 4 colors, residential, commercial, religious, and government. So I've used 4 different local woods. I had to really up my Photoshop skills to get that to look even remotely three-dimensional. There's 870 buildings that are going to have to be individually laser cut out. So I'll have to stick those all on the map at some point. Anyway, social justice-wise, this is an aerial photo of Huntsville before interstates, before urban renewal, before eminent domain demolished huge chunks of it. You can see a nice new highway. And this is my research that says every building in red has been demolished since 1969. The background hashed areas were eminent domain. The yellow street was the black business district downtown. There's not a single building left standing. There's a 6-lane road that I have provisionally spoken to the city and said, can you close a turn lane and give it to me? And I put 16 foot of solid steel and highlight every building that was demolished by city policy. They've said, maybe. And on the back, I spoke to the long-range city planner and said, I can leave you a little spot that says city planning, we're sorry. And they actually took that really well and said, well, it wasn't us, it was previous people, so maybe. So the little green dot is where I'm hoping to put it. And I've had so many people come to me and said, oh, you should approach the black business district and get them to fund it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I want to only have white people fund this, take a bit of road, give it back, and make it solid. And like, you can't miss this. Oh, that's my timer saying I'm out of time. Look at that. So that is my contact info, if anyone wants to keep up with me. I'm also wearing a shirt that's for sale on my store. If Hans, who's on the board, can promote his products, so can I. I also work in a public space. People can come into my studio and ask questions, and what is cartography is probably the most common question, so I decided, here's my definition of cartography. So, thank you very much. We have time for questions. Question?
This is fascinating. I'm wondering, though, what you do to actually extend this a bit would be to have some sort of a video system or recording system or some sort of opportunity for writing so you could capture people's reactions to it.
Capturing people's reactions to it is something I hadn't thought of, but if I get to do one that's around social justice, I'm planning a QR code and have that lead to interviews with people whose property was taken. So, yes, some interactive part, probably some story maps that will go behind the scenes on these as well. So, yeah, I might like to capture people's reactions. I might just go stand in a bush and film them. Public art does not have to be outside. It has to be... The large one is in City Hall. It's the new building they're building in Huntsville. So definition of public art is something that is accessible to public. So it can't be in a private building that's locked. So courthouse, City Hall, state capitals count as public. Any other questions for weird people who do big maps? Did I win with the biggest map? Yes. Okay. If anyone wants to ask me more questions or chat about public art or how much I spent of my own money, $4,752. You can speak to me anytime this evening. I'll be around. I'll be hanging around tomorrow. I might go for a bike ride. So thank you very much.